Hello, beautiful people. My name is Frederick Harper, and I'm a senior developer advocate at DigitalOcean, and I welcome you to Fred Answers Questions. This is episode number 2, and today's question is coming from Lars Klan, who is asking how to architect and develop a scalable product that can also be iterated quite easily. Let's dive in. My friend Lars, this is a loaded question. I like it. This is a high level question. This is nearly like a philosophical question. And because of that, because of the nature of the question, my answer will be based on my experience, on my specific vision about your question. Before being a developer advocate, I was a software developer. I managed project, I managed team, I was working with customers. I did this for a couple of years before moving to, should I say, the more social part of a technical type of job. So, there's a saying in the startup industry that is like, you should fail fast or something like that. And I kind of understand that because, it's a competitive world. You need to do what you have to do without a lot of resources. But I'm pretty sure that the way to go as a foundation is really you need to take some time to think about your architecture. You need to have a good mix, a good in middle between executing, so right up like going to coding and using the technology and trying to implement the future versus like thinking all the time also. So it's really to try to find the right mix, because if you think for too long, you won't make it. Like, you're gonna have competitors, you're gonna have someone else somewhere working on the same idea as you, because I firmly believe that as brilliant as you are or other people are, there is always someone somewhere that has the exact same idea as you. And that person or that team or that company may already start working on the product, or maybe not. But anyhow, even if you take a lot of time about thinking about your architecture, you will probably still make mistakes. So I don't have the right answers in terms of like time or percentage of like splitting your time between thinking and starting to code, but I'm a firm believer that you need to step back, really think about your architecture, having discussion with your team, and after that starting to execute. But don't do this for too long. So it's kind of like a tricky thing. And when the team is smaller, I prefer to have one person that steered the ship. Having kind of like one vision, because when there is too many bosses in the room, it doesn't work. Which doesn't mean that other people on the team cannot share their opinions or cannot even be part of the brainstorming. But at the end of the day, I think it's a great idea to have like a product manager, someone who will decide of the roadmap. And obviously, as I said, the team can really like influence that roadmap. The thing also is that focus on what you know, what you need now. Consider the big pictures, but focus on what you need now and what you know. And there's always that MVP thinking that you need to keep in mind. When it comes to the architecture itself, I'm a huge fan of the microservices approach, or function as a service, where you're going to be able to have a small part of your application split in different ways, not having everything on the same virtual machine, not having everything in the same place, because that gives you a lot more opportunities in different area. First, you're not depending on only one item, one part of your architecture to make your application work, because if that part fails, everything else is not working. Depending on like what the type of application you're working on, that may or may not make a difference. The other part of it is that as granular as you can get with your architecture and the application structure, that gives you the opportunity to make it easier for different people to work on different parts. One of the other things that I always say, and it's usually when I talk when people are starting to do software development, it's quite overwhelming. Like, software development development is overwhelming because it's amazing. I like it. You have so much power. You can create things. You code and it materializes in an application, in a website, in a script, even no matter what you want to do. But the thing is that there is so many technologies out there that it's impossible to know everything. And trust me, it's part of my job. Like, I should have time. I'm taking time in my weekly schedule to learn stuff, to learn new stuff, to consolidate the learning that I have. Because, when I go on stage, I need to have the credibility. But anyhow, the thing is that there is so many technologies out there, and there's always the new flavor of the week. So what I would say, use the technology that makes sense for you. Use the technology that you know. And in most cases, the technology will be appropriate for your needs. Sometimes maybe not. So again, go back to the thinking part, but don't try to just chase the new technology or use it for the sake of using it. And I know it's exciting to try something new, but if you want to be successful, it's probably easier to use a technology that you know well and a technology that you're going to be able to use quite quickly. Simplicity is the key. This is one of the things I really love in our way of doing things at DO. So I'm not part of the engineering team, but I use the products all the time. I use our own products all the time. And this is also part of why I decided to join DO, is because the products are really simple. They're clean. The UI is minimal. So simplicity doesn't mean that you cannot do complex thing or that you have limited feature. It just means that there is other ways to do those things. Like you can use the API, you can use the CLI. So my view on those things, that when you build your product, try to think about building something clean. Try to think about building something that will have the feature that your user needs, and try to iterate as often as you can. Release often. This is how you're going to be able to see if it's working well or no. Obviously, there's no black magic here. Container is the way to go. Maybe even Kubernetes, if it makes sense for you, because you can really start small and use it for more complex setups. The beauty with Kubernetes is that it's easier to use if you want to scale, but it can also get complex because there's a lot of things you can do with it. So think about this too when you're gonna start to build your application or architect your application. But at the end of the day, container is the way to go. I'm a huge fan of coding your architecture for different reasons. As an example, I use Terraform. I really like the platform. I'm not making money. It's not a promotion. It's just my own very own taste. What is great is that it's easy to change your architecture. You're using something code. Obviously, you need to learn a little bit the syntax, but once you're done with the syntax, once you know the foundation of that syntax, you are good to go. So you can code your architecture. I'm a huge fan of Git. So you're going to be able to get some versioning out of your architecture. That will make it easier to replicate. That will make it easier to find any issues with your architecture or anything that could be wrong, because you're going to know exactly when and why did you change stuff. One of the main thing that I should say, don't try to reinvent the wheel. I know people, you're good developers. You're great developers. You can build whatever you want. But you know what? There is probably a framework out there. There's probably a library that is doing what you want to do. So the idea is to take those pieces and put them together to save some time. And obviously there is pros and cons. So again, I'm a huge fan of not creating things that are already out there. But obviously some of them may not be maintained very well. They may have security issues. But the beauty of most of them is that we're usually talking about open source. So if there's something you want to change, please go ahead. If you want to add a feature, you can do it. And also, please take the time to at least read a little bit the code and understand exactly what is behind the hood. It's not just about the input and the output. It should not be a black box. Don't be afraid to fight the status quo. It's not because you did something in a specific way before or you use a specific architecture that you should do exactly the same thing right now. Obviously, I said before, try to go with things that you know, with procedure or technology or programming language that you know, because that's going to make your life easier. Again, if it makes sense for what you want to build. But it's not because things were done in a certain way before that they need to be done like this again. Try not to be vendor locked in. So I'm a huge fan of using standard technology that if tomorrow there is a problem with my vendor, there is a problem with, as an example, the cloud provider that I'm using, I want to be able to take my virtual machine, I want to be able to take my services and move them to another one if there is any issue. It's something that happens quite often with cloud provider, and there is benefits of using technology developed by the provider for different reasons. Sometimes it's for speed, sometimes it's for convenience. But think about the fact that if it's just specific to a platform, you may be stuck with them. And it's going well right now with the people you're working with, but what about tomorrow? What about if the pricing change? What about if the terms of services change? What about if the services is not good enough anymore for different reasons? So vendor locked in is something that you should really avoid when you're architecting your application, you're thinking about where you're going to host and what you're going to do and how you're going to make that application live on the web. In the end, keep in mind that no matter how much time you prepare, no matter the experience you have, you will inevitably have bugs. I guess it's the foundation of what we do. We basically try to solve problem, but we create bugs too by solving problem. So I may be old-fashioned on that side, but one of the last thing that I would say is that for me, I think it's important, especially when the company is new, or especially when you have like a quite nice team in terms of like size. I'm a big fan of having some basic coding rules and processes written down somewhere. Like create a document, write down how you should code things, how you write code. And the idea is not to restrict people. I'm not huge on red tapes. I want to give people freedom to do what they do best, to be creative. I trust people, and you should too. You should trust the people you hire. But at the end of the day, this is the reality. And everybody has their way of doing things, especially if you're dealing with a more senior developer who has developed in a specific way for a long time. It's also true with junior developers that are not quite sure where they should start, what are their own style or what are the style that they should use. And, people left, or you need to say goodbye to some people in your team and you're going to hire new people, or the team's going to grow. So that ensures that you're going to have consistency in terms of quality of code and the quality of the work that you're delivering. So in the end, none of that matters if your users doesn't use or like your product. If they're not using it, if you're selling something and they're not buying it, it does not make sense. So my last tip would be make the users, your customers, part of the process, and make a feedback process. Is there a way for me as a user of your application to be able to submit feedback to you? And will you care about that feedback? And make that process easy, because forms with 10,000 questions won't do it. If I feel like I'm not being listened to, I won't do it either. And there's a difference between trying to please everyone, which you should not do. It's impossible. But at the same time, you should listen. And there's different ways for you to do that. So invite them to beta test. Some user love that. They want to be part of something. Welcome their good and not so good feedback. Because it's good to have praise, good job, Fred, you did good code. But at the same time, it's great to know why people don't like that feature, why people don't use that feature, or even having people reporting bugs that you may have missed. That was a long, opinionated video today. I hope that answered the questions. But again, Lars, good question. Thanks for today. Thanks for watching the video. Please use the form and submit some questions. Anything that is technical for a technical audience that can be high level as today, really specific to DigitalOcean product, or any other issues or problem or question you're having when it comes to software development, I will be more than happy to answer those. In the meantime, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any other new FAQ episode, and check the other content because we have good stuff and not just made by me. So on that note, have a good one.